Here's a question for you, Chuck. Why choose
Yes.
Procella? Why choose Procella over M&K, Rendell, or B&Ws?
The Priscilla, I can talk a little bit about the Priscilla philosophy here. Because Anders, the designer of the speakers, is a cinema designer, his approach has always been the same that he's taken with designing a commercial cinema. And that means that all of the speakers are specified to a given listening distance for reference level performance. Rather than saying, your room is so many cubic feet, the reality is with a point source speaker, the level is going to drop with distance. So the significant factor is how far are the listening positions from where the loudspeakers are located. So when we specify a speaker, we say that it is a 2-meter reference level, a 4-meter reference level, 8-meter reference level. Basically, a 2-meter reference level is what you have with a hi-fi type speaker, which has a dome tweeter. That means that it can produce reference level, which is 105 decibels, at a 2-meter distance. When you go beyond that, the level is going to drop off, or if you try to push the speaker harder, it's going to go into dynamic compression, and ultimately you're going to blow it up. So the M&K speakers and other hi-fi type speakers use dome tweeters typically. They may use multiples of them, but in any case, they are limited by the output capability. The Procella approach, on the other hand, is to use the Pro Audio approach. We use a compression driver. And a compression driver is typically what you see in sound reinforcement or in the cinema. But the difference here is we are tuning the system for hi-fi performance in a home theater environment. We're not worried about getting something to the back row of a 200-foot cinema. We're concerned about getting something to maybe 30 or 40 feet, but that's still a relatively small room compared to a cinema. And unlike what you have in a cinema and with some other brands of speakers that are they're also using compression drivers for home theater, these are tuned in the way that an audiophile speaker would be tuned. So they don't have a bright, tipped up, in your face kind of quality. They're more laid back in their presentation, and that makes them much easier to listen to for extended periods if you're listening at reference level. And again, reference level is specified in cinemas by THX to ensure that the full dynamic range can be properly reproduced so that the audience experiences what the creators of the film wanted them to experience. And so if I can't tell if I'm sharing, are you getting my screen right now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So if we start at the middle row, we have the P5 family, the P6 family, the P8 family, and then the P28. These are the models for main and surround speakers. We don't have dedicated center channels. We don't have dedicated surrounds. Our recommendation is that you use as much as possible the same speakers around. Certainly for LCR, they should be the same. On the other hand, they are all tuned with what we call identical voice, so that, and this is true of most of our systems, you can mix and match. For example, a typical system would use the P8 as the LCR speaker and then P6Vs as surround speakers. Now, every model on that line is basically set up to the home THX standard, meaning that it's set up for an 80 hertz crossover to the subwoofer. And that's pretty much normal for most home theater speakers. We go beyond that, though. So if you go up to the second row where you have the 3 tall speakers, those are full range speakers, and they're also bi-amplified. You may have noticed by now that they are modular. If you look at the P610, for example, you'll see that there's a 10-inch woofer, but there's also a module that has a 6.5-inch woofer and the tweeter that is exactly the same as the P6 in the line below. And that's exactly what it is. It's a P6, but we convert it on a modular basis into a full range speaker by feeding one amplifier channel to the P6 for the mids and highs, and another amplifier channel to the woofer for the lows, and we get a speaker that extends to 40 hertz. DSP crossover and a second amplifier, of course, are necessary for that. So a P610, for example, is a 4-meter reference level speaker. If you have a larger room, you would go to the P815, which has a 15-inch woofer, 8-inch mid-range, and a larger compression driver. That's an 8-meter, which means it's going to 25, 26 feet. It's going to play 105 decibels all day long. And if you've got a giant room, and this will actually work in a cinema, the P860 is 16 meters. So it's actually capable of something like 137 decibels of output at a meter. So the idea is we will ask, what is the room configuration? What's the size of the room? But more importantly, where are the listening positions? How far are the seats from where the screen is located? And with that, we can use that information to determine which speaker is best. We're not going to recommend a more expensive model by claiming that it's going to give you better sound quality, because it really isn't. It's tuned to sound the same. The goal is to make sure that we achieve full dynamic range. And so you don't want to underpower, and there's no need to overpower. And that's our approach. So the reason, to go back to the question, is that you're going to have better dynamic range in a larger space. And an additional factor, we use waveguides for all of our tweeters. So the compression driver is not mounted on a conventional horn, which has a typical kind of coloration. It's on a waveguide which has computer designed shape to it that disperses the high frequencies much more uniformly than a dome tweeter does. So the people who are sitting not in the center seat, but the people who are sitting off to the sides are going to hear a much smoother high frequency response. They're going to get more information. There's going to be greater dialogue intelligibility, and the imaging is going to be better. And that's a real benefit of using the waveguide, which we would not have with a typical hi-fi speaker.
Thank you for the question, Morton. All right, what do we got here?
So we've looked at the full range speakers. We looked at the passive 80 hertz crossover speakers. Then